In today's show, the NBA can't take a break. Michael Malone and Calvin Booth get fired in Denver. We'll talk about what it means for the Portland Trail Blazers, plus what I'm watching in the final 3 games of the regular season. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen and tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's program, we're going to talk about the Nuggets cleaning house, firing their coach and their GM in the final week of the regular season as they march towards the playoffs. Whoa, the NBA just can't take a break. Teams are always wiling out. And increasingly, we're getting these, at least we've had 2 this year, somewhat unprecedented late regular season firings for teams that are competitive. And we'll talk about what Coach Malone being on the market and all of that means for the Portland Trailblazers, because certainly many of you are curious when a really good coach is available, or at least is no longer employed. We'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about what I actually had planned for today's program, was that I want to talk about what I'm watching in the final 3 games of the regular season. The Blazers have quote-unquote nothing to play for, and I think you can take the quotes off of that. They are out of the play-in. They're going to play a game, and on Wednesday evening, you're listening to Wednesday, April 9th program, and this evening and on Wednesday night, they're going to play in Utah for their final road game of the season. The Jazz are the worst team in the NBA, and they're proud of it. It's going to be a weird game for 2 teams with very little incentive, but we'll see how it goes. But instead of just saying like these games are pointless, I'm going to try to watch some stuff, and I'll share you who in particular, Rayan, Rupert, and Jabari Walker, who I'm going to be watching and what I'm going to be watching for with those 2. But the league waits for no man. Do not plan a podcast. There'll be seismic moves. In general, I don't think Michael Malone and Calvin Booth getting fired has much to do with the Portland Trailblazers on its face, but we will get there. But let's talk about what went down. First of all, one of the fun parts about working for the Locked On Podcast Network is I'm sitting here, I see this breaking news, and I say, holy cow. And then within, Michael Malone, he's the only winningest coach in Denver Nuggets history. He's been there for 10 seasons. He's probably one of the best coaches in the league for my money. He's 22 months removed from leading the team to their only title. Calvin Booth, who took over in that title season, put the finishing touches on a championship team, and maybe he's made some missteps since then, but there's a week left in the regular season, a largely unprecedented firing but only reason that it feels somewhat normal is because there was another largely unprecedented firing when Taylor Jenkins, a coach of a talented team, was fired with 3 weeks left in the regular season. NBA teams just can't stop wiling out. But the Nuggets cleaned house, right? They didn't just fire the coach or just fire the GM. They fired everybody. This was a seismic thing. And when seismic news happens, some of my NBA friends text me and my NBA friends text me, and they're like, wait, what? And we exchange various versions of wait, what back and forth. Usually with some bad words sprinkled in there as well. And after we get through the wait, whats. And then, with the fun part about working with the Locked On Podcast Network is I'm like, I bet Locked On Nuggets has a live show. And indeed they do. Swipa and Matt Moore and Rayan, all up. I don't know why Matt got a last name. So Swipa and Matt and Rayan hop on Locked On Nuggets and break down why this went down. And Matt Moore has since written a story on The Dig, his Substack about the Denver Nuggets, sort of diving into more of how this happened. And here's what I gather from listening to Locked On Nuggets. I recommend it, and reading Matt Moore's work. I guess Matt's just going to get a last name. So from reading it, it sounds like there was a pretty well-reported riff between Booth and Malone within the sort of Nuggets organization. I think people who follow the league closely, and particularly follow the Nuggets closely, know that the GM and the coach didn't get along because the coach didn't want to play young players because he wanted to win, and the GM said, will you please play these young players? I drafted them for a reason, and also, if you don't play them, we can't trade them, and then there became a rift within the organization. Apparently, that was pretty toxic. But then in addition, this year, the Nuggets defense just never got to where it needed to be. Nikola Jokic is having one of the great seasons in NBA history. Now, he might not be rewarded MVP honors for that great season, but he really is having one of the great statistical seasons in NBA history. He's probably playing the best basketball of his career, although he's probably slipped a little bit on defense, but he's having he is a dude who's won 3 MVPs, and he is maybe playing the best basketball of his life. And part of the reason the Nuggets just can't get to where they want to go is the defense just hasn't been able to be good enough, long enough, and Jamal Murray has been inconsistent. All of those reasons, a defense that is inconsistent, a team that with championship aspirations that is probably shy of that, just realistically of being, they're like, on the fringe of like, who's the worst team that could win a title? It's like, Denver and Golden State. It's like, these are the teams that are just like not that good, but also you could see like if they get going and their guys and their best players get going, they could win a championship. I think they're on that tier, like that, the outer circle or the second circle of teams that could win a championship. And the Nuggets facing probably a reality that, that they're a likely early playoff exit team. They're a team that could conceivably slip down in the standings because the NBA Western Conference, the middle of the NBA Western Conference middle standings are truly, truly a mess. The Nuggets, as I'm recording this before the games happen on Tuesday, or just after the East Coast games tipped off, they're in 4th place. They're a game and a half out of 3rd and a half game out of 8th. They could be on the road in the play-in, or they could have home court advantage in the playoffs. That's how tight it is in the middle of the Western Conference standings. This is, I think, if you kind of zoom out enough and you allow yourself to just be like someone who allows anything to be logical, you can say like, oh yeah, well, Mike Malone, his voice wore out on the team and their defense never got right and all of those things. And like, of course they had to make a change because, Nikola Jokic had been frustrated. There's some reporting that he was clearly frustrated, but also Matt Moore reported very plainly that Nikola Jokic did not ask for anyone to be fired in this situation, although he was frustrated with the season, but you might be too, if you're having the year he's having, but you're just like, the team just can't get where they want to go. They're just not one of the elite teams right now. They're in the mix, but they're not one of the elite teams. You could probably, you can make the case, fire the coach, right? If you're just like willing to follow any path and find the logic there, right? And you could make the case to fire the GM too. He's made some decisions, probably handcuffed in part by, the front office, or excuse me, the ownership's unwillingness to have a really, really expensive roster, and maybe he hasn't nailed some draft picks outside of Christian Brown, and he's maybe given away some questionable contracts like to Zeke Naji and Dario Saric. But like, I don't think if you live in reality that you could make a case that this is a logical move considering where we are in the season. I think there's a thing maybe just like in the internet age where people try to take simple explanations and like make them more complicated. Here's the simple explanation. This is a weird, dumb thing to do. You could have just done this at the end of the season and fire everybody. But instead, I think this is in large part the logic that followed the Memphis Grizzlies, is they felt like, we're going to fire Taylor Jenkins anyways. He's no good for what we need right now. If we go into the playoffs with him, our ceiling is limited because we don't think we can win 1, much less 2 playoff series with him. Let's just go ahead and pull the Band-Aid off and fire him now. That was a largely unprecedented firing when a couple weeks ago, the Memphis Grizzlies fired the winningest coach in franchise history, Taylor Jenkins. This is even more so unprecedented, and it's just the simplest way to explain it is these are teams making dumb and rash decisions, but it's the same logic, right? It's the same logic. Like, to me, you just be a normal team and fire a coach in the offseason and like don't add unnecessary challenges. But this has a ripple effect to the Portland Trailblazers, right? Because in part, they may have a coach opening soon. Chauncey Billups is entering the final. He'll enter this summer with a team option on his contract. The Blazers will have the right to exercise him and bring him back for 1 year. Obviously, he could negotiate for a longer contract, etc. But when the Blazers this week announced that they had signed Joe Cronin to a multi-year contract, and that announcement did not come with a piggyback announcement of they've also signed the coach, to me, and I've been making the educated guess that I did not think Billups would be back, this seems to me more arrows arrows pointing in that direction, if you are saying, hey, we're going to put the foundation of our franchise, we're going to solidify it and move forward, and you only do that with the GM but not with the coach, and the coach is entering this season when the team could just move on from him cleanly, yeah, it does seem like that's the direction they're heading. So as I mentioned when we did this sort of Taylor Jenkins show, yeah, I think Mike Malone's one of the best coaches in the league. I think he would be an upgrade over Chauncey Billups in terms of experience and maybe some tactical stuff, right? But coaches get fired for different reasons, and coaches get hired for different reasons. A lot of the reasons that both Jenkins and Malone got fired is because they failed to live up to fairly high expectations set. And the Blazers, who came into the season without particularly high expectations, have really appreciated the work Chauncey Billups has done, which has factually been the best work of his career over the final 3 months of the season. He has put out a consistently competent product, albeit they're very shorthanded in the final week of the season, and it might not feel like that as they close the year. So in the way that I felt like Jenkins would probably be an upgrade over Billups just based on what we know, I think Malone would pretty clearly be an upgrade over Billups based on what we know. But teams hire coaches for different reasons. Would Mike Malone, in his particularly fiery and demanding style, and in the way that he prefers to play veterans who won't make mistakes, which is a very common coaching thing, as opposed to playing young players and giving them leeway to kind of learn and figure it all out, would he be a good fit for what the Blazers have? Is he the type of personality that would fit well with, say, a Shaedon Sharpe? Like, would Mike Malone screaming at Shaedon Sharpe be valuable? I don't know, right? Maybe that's exactly what Shaedon Sharpe needs. Would the move from Billups, from what I understand, based on my conversations with people around the team, not a yeller, someone who sternly tells people what the deal is, but not a screamer. And from what I know about Michael Malone, a yeller, someone who yells, right? Would the change from that, would the change in personalities be the type of thing the Blazers think fits with a young roster? I believe they're the youngest roster in the NBA, although they're going to be a different roster next year. So they will be one of the younger rosters in the league next season. Fairly safe bet on that one. I think that's the question. It's not whether Malone would be like an upgrade in a vacuum or Taylor Jenkins an upgrade in a vacuum. It's whether it's the right coach at the right time. The other ripple effect here is that when I did the Chauncey episode back in early February, I had done some list of candidates to know, maybe 8 or 9 names to know if you're thinking about who could replace Chauncey Billups. And 2 of those names on the list were Tuomas Isalo, who is now the interim head coach for the Memphis Grizzlies because they fired Taylor Jenkins, and Dave Adelman, who is now the interim head coach for the Denver Nuggets because they fired Mike Malone. And this is I feel like this is an important thing to know, is that Matt Moore of The Dig reports that Adelman is both well respected across the league and very well liked within the Nuggets locker room by the players. So there's a chance that Adelman just sticks around. I'm pretty sure that the Grizzlies didn't hire Isalo and give him all that money last year and then fire everybody to give him the job to not let him stick around too. So if you're looking, it's not only that like Taylor Jenkins is available and the Blazers could consider him, but is that the type of job Jenkins wants? And Malone is available, and is that the type of job that Malone wants? Or does he want to hire, does he want a team that's do both of those coaches want teams that are maybe closer to winning a playoff series, right? Than the Blazers are going to be next season? What is their appetite, and also like personality wise, particularly with the fiery Mike Malone, is he the type of personality the Blazers think would be valuable for their roster? And then the other ripple effect is that higher, well-respected, or at least like names to know in the sort of like assistant coaches that could get put into the big chair. 2 of those names have been put into the big chair in other places. So if the Blazers do indeed make a change, there is a shifting sand of who is available for this franchise. At this point, I don't think Chauncey Billups, quote unquote, deserves to lose his job. I just think he's going to, right? I think it's the most likely scenario, and like sometimes in the coaching world, it is unfair, and because Billups was not the hire by Cronin, this is the chance for Cronin to put his stamp on who leads the franchise moving forward, particularly with the job security. So I'm not calling for Billups to be fired here. What I'm saying is the reality is that other teams are making swift and immediate moves, and the Blazers find themselves in a position likely to respond to those swift and immediate moves to some extent. Okay, there's 3 games left in the regular season, and I'm going to be watching a couple guys, starting with Rayan Rupert. I haven't seen much of him, and I'm curious to see more of the Blazers youngster. Join me in the second segment, and we'll talk all about him. First, though, I want to tell you that today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health, but traditional in-person therapy can be expensive, often ranging from $100 to $250 per session. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. With online therapy, you get quality care at a price that makes sense, saving you time and saving you money. Therapy isn't just for life's toughest moments. Therapy can be incredibly valuable if you are dealing with an acute and major trauma in your life. Talking to a neutral third party to help you work through that is invaluable. But therapy can also help with everyday stress. It can help you learn how to set boundaries, develop positive coping skills. It can help you learn to love yourself where you're at, or work towards a place where loving yourself where you're at is easier. And having access to support when you need it can make a big difference. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right. Blazers have 3 games left in the regular season. I'm going to watch them because that's the job. That's how it works. But who's going to play for the Blazers is certainly, I don't know if it's quote unquote in question, but it is a notable part of these final few games is just who's on the injury report. And the Blazers, heading into their game against the Jazz, have a fairly lengthy injury report. As the team has already flown to Utah while I'm recording this, no surprises that the guys who are out for the season, DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant, and Rob Williams are not available Wednesday night. But joining them is Scoot Henderson, still in the concussion protocol. I think it's getting a little bit of a bummer that Scoot's season might just be done. He might have taken a elbow stiff arm to the face from Domantas Sabonis, and he's just not going to play again. That stinks, because part of like watching the end of this year is just like watching, guys get to do a little bit more, and certainly Scoot was going to have an opportunity to play like 35 minutes and like really go for it. Joining them out, Bryce McGowan's also out. He had a rib fracture that he sustained with the Rip City remix, and he's one of the Blazers two-way guys that is out. He actually would be relatively helpful now just because he gets shots up. He's not super efficient, and sometimes he can get a little wily with those shots, but they could use him. And adding to that list, Denny Avdija is listed as questionable with the right thumb sprain that caused him to miss the Blazers' last game. Duop Reith is listed as out with right knee tendonitis. He's missed a couple of games as well. And also Anthony Simons is questionable with that right forearm contusion that has caused him to miss the prior 2 games. So the Blazers could be like super duper shorthanded. This could be basically the game they had the other night where you had 10 available bodies. If you also include Sidi Sissoko and you play 9 of them, hopefully they play all 10. It's time to let them go. But part of like what I'm going to watch during this stretch is I want to see some of the guys who haven't played a ton play a ton. I want to see, not because it's like, oh, I'm so like they deserve to be set free, but I'm curious. And Rayan Rupert is the top of my curiosity because I just haven't seen him very much. I just haven't seen him. He's played in 49 games this year, but just 373 total minutes. That's about 7 minutes a game. Like, he just doesn't play very much. In fact, 72% of his minutes have come in the second half. He's yet to start a game this year, and he just plays when the game is decided. Not only have 72% of his minutes come in the second half, 55% of his minutes, according to NBA.com, have come when the margin in the game is 16 or more. Basically, half of his minutes have come when the games are non-competitive. At one team, either the Blazers or their opponent, has at least a 16-point lead. 55% of Rayan Rupert's minutes have come with a margin greater than 16. He just doesn't play that many meaningful minutes. But in each of the last 2 games, for the first time this season, he's played 20-plus in back-to-back games. Played about 21 minutes in the loss to Chicago and played 24 minutes in the win over the Spurs. It's not like he's setting the world on fire. He had 7, 4, and 2 steals. That's 4 rebounds against the Bulls. And he followed that up with 7 points, 3 assists, and 3 steals against the Spurs. Like, what I'm watching with Rayan Rupert is not box score stuff, right? Like, he's in those games, shot 1 of 3 and 1 of 2 from 3. He didn't shoot particularly well inside the arc in either of those games, making just 2 of 6 and then 1 of 7 2-pointers. Like that has always been a problem during his brief NBA career. But like the intriguing part about Rayan Rupert is that he's not yet 21 years old. We've seen him sparingly across 2 seasons, and that he's entering next season. The Blazers have a team option that I assume they'll exercise. There's no reason that they wouldn't. No obvious reason right now that they wouldn't. Obviously, he could be part of any number of deals heading into the offseason, but like assuming that he is not traded, I would be very surprised if Rayan Rupert's deal isn't exercised. Why do you draft? If you draft a teenager in the second round, you draft a project. You know it's going to be a project. You commit to the project. But we just haven't seen much of him. So I'm really intrigued to watch him, because when you do watch him, boy, the defensive instincts are there. Like, he can really defend. He's so long. Like, his arms are so long, and he's really good at using that length to get his hand on someone with a loose handle. If you're dribbling and get a little loose with that around him, Rupair will poke it away from in front of you. He has sort of the length and the sort of craftiness to make some of those steals when reaching in from behind. Like, he's got craft there. He's not super strong. So you see him sometimes on defense get bodied a little bit. Like he'll get knocked back and like get knocked off his square, so to speak. But like, he's got great defensive instincts and great defensive interest. And I think instincts plus interest plus the physical tools with the super duper long arms and the quickness at his size, he's like a really intriguing point of attack defender. He's not a particularly good one at this stage, but he's like, that's the thing about young players. It's like, you're not saying like Rupes come in and lock it down. What you're saying is like, Rayan Rupert has the tools and the interest in becoming a good defender. I want to see him more. So over these final 3 games, I hope Rayan Rupert plays something like 25 minutes a night, and we get to continue to see it. On offense, he shoots a real high arcing 3, right? That ball gets up high in the air. So, I'd like to see those shots go in. I'd like to see him attack closeouts and be, and be aggressive off the dribble. I think he's done that a little bit, but not a ton, right? Like, he's still kind of figuring out where he fits in on offense. And even like in the games that he's played recently, it's not like it's been like the Rupair show by any means. It's not like, hey, go for it, dog. Like he's still playing next to primaries, Shaden Sharp and Denny in those last 2 games. And even Toumani Camara is taking those responsibilities as well as like, I'm going to be someone who gets shots up like that. Like, Rupair is a get in where you fit in type of player on offense right now, and like figuring out where he fits in is important, but the tools are there and intriguing, right? Like, not yet 21, 6'6", with long arms. Like, he is in many ways the exact type of player the Blazers have pursued. A multi-positional defender who maybe struggles with some outside shooting, but is toolsy enough that you feel like, if you get the skill level up, the frame and the athleticism, like, the way he moves at his size and the defensive upside, like, this is exactly the type of role player you want. I think the Blazers have maybe been a little more, as I sort of dive into it, a little more open to different types of players, say like Scoot Henderson, when they're like trying to project who might be a star on the roster. But when they're aiming for role players, they really do have a type, and Rayan Rupert fits that type, right? So I want to see Rupes spread his wings a little bit more and play well in these last 3 games and kind of continue to show us, particularly on defense, what he can do, because he's an intriguing part. And again, there's a club option for next season. If the Blazers want him back, he'll be back. Jabari Walker is another case. He's entering free agency this summer, and he is another toolsy, multi-positional defender wing. And I want to watch Jabari too to close the season, because I think he is entering a summer where his future is truly unknown. Let's talk about that. Talk about Jabari in the third segment. Join me there, won't you? First, though, let's talk about Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%, plus you also get 4% APY on your cash and in non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhoodgold.com. Robinhood.com/gold. Let me give that to you again. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks, rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. So, I think one of the intriguing parts of the end of the season is that you get to see guys like Rayan Rupert, and you get to see guys like Jabari Walker play a little bit. And I'm intrigued by Jabari Walker because his just sort of like his raw counting numbers have improved enough that you're like, maybe Bari's got it. But I don't think those raw counting numbers necessarily match up with my personal eye test. And then the impact stuff, like his on-off numbers, suggest that the Blazers kill in his minutes. And it is one of those things where I don't think when I have watched Jabari closely this year, as I try to do, I try to do with everybody. It's not like some guys on the team I'm not watching closely. I'm trying to do my best to provide a good show here on the program. But when I've watched him closely, I haven't felt like he's been, appreciably better in new ways that I haven't noticed in the past. Other than shooting, but really a lot of the shooting, because it's on relatively low volume, like overall, we haven't seen Rupair and we haven't really seen Bari. He's played in 57 games and a total of 672 minutes, but like that ain't a bunch. That's under 12 a night. He's mostly been on the outside of the rotation, which like the same with Rupair. Like at the beginning of the season, you knew Rups was going to be outside the rotation. Just you say if the team's relatively healthy, like where are his minutes going to come from, right? Because of the existence of Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe and Anfernee Simons, it's like, well, there's not a lot of guard spots. At the beginning of the year, we thought Matisse Thybulle would be back much sooner than he was. Okay, well, that's going to eat into the sort of like of those minutes. Because you have Denny Avdia and because you have Toumani Camara and because you have Jeremy Grant, it's like there's not a lot of obvious forward minutes. And then you have 3 centers who need to play with Ayton and Klingon and Rob Williams. Like when everybody was healthy at the beginning of the year, there just wasn't space. Like it was clear that guys like Rayan Rupert and guys like Jabari Walker and Duop Reith, I was like, that's the end of the bench. Like those guys are outside of the rotation. So I'm not saying it's like surprising or even like bad that those dudes didn't play very much. I wouldn't spin it as such. I know some folks out there wish Jabari had played a little bit more, and I think there's been spaces probably where it would have been better to go Jabari and go all switching smaller lineups than maybe having like Duop Reith in the games. But even then, you're just kind of nitpicking a little bit. And I guess like if you really are about it, there's like maybe been some minutes where Chris Murray has played and Bari could have played those minutes at the other forward spot. But I think the Blazers and particularly Chauncey Billups really appreciate Chris Murray's defensive versatility and ability to guard multiple spots. And while Bari has that, he is not the level of defender Chris is, and he's probably not better enough at anything on offense to really make that case. Jabari's more of a small ball 5, but he's like 6'7"-ish. Although he has played more power forward this year. Although Basketball Reference, which I never understand what their positions means, is trying to tell me that he's played more center this year than he did a year ago. And I don't even know if I believe that. But I know in prepping for this, I was like, look, I always have hated the position classifications on Basketball Reference, and I was reminded that I still hate them today. But perhaps, again, this is like an eye test thing for me. I'll dig into it somewhere else and see if I really believe it. But Jabari, like I said, like the box score numbers are real. He's shooting better from 2 than he ever has. His career high from 2. He's shooting 39% from 3. A lot of that is because he had a monster week where he made something like 70% of his threes, including a 6-for-6 night against the Boston Celtics. If you take out the 6-for-6 night, right? If you say crazy outlier game, which you don't have to. That's not how it works, right? But let's say you can just take the whole sample. And it's already a small number even if you take the whole sample. But if you were to remove that game, instead of shooting 39.4% from 3, he's shooting 33% from 3 on the season. I don't say that to say like you should take out the best game every player played and that's actually what their averages are. That's a nonsense way of doing math. What I'm saying is the volume is low enough, just 66 3-point attempts on the season, that if you do take out one game, it does significantly alter the percentages. It's not like I'm just saying that to emphasize the volume. But on a permanent basis, Bari is actually shooting more threes than he ever has in his career, and he's making more threes than he ever has in his career, and that's going to be the thing that allows him to stick in the league. If I don't think 66 attempts across 57 games is enough to be like a meaningful, this guy can shoot now, but certainly after spending 2 seasons shooting below 30% from three, to have a year when you're shooting 39% from three, even on relatively low volume, is meaningful, or at least maybe not meaningful, but eyebrow raising. You should say, what if that's real? And so over the final 3 games of the season, I hope Bari gets shots up. I hope he shoots a bunch because he is a multi-positional defender. I don't think he's like this elite defensive player, but he can guard a bunch of different spots because of his strength and because of he has some lateral quickness to guard 3, 4s and some 5s. You don't want him to guard big 5s, but you want him to play in small switchy lineups where he's like effectively a center, but you're switching everything 1 through 5, and you use his defensive versatility along with other defensive versatile players with versatility across the lineup to switch everything and like keep guys in front and do the things you do with switching in the NBA, which is like prevent people from taking open threes and pick and pops. That's why everybody switches things. Watch the way teams guard switchy bigs. You do it for a reason, because if you try to get back, you've already given up a 3 in the NBA where teams are going to launch him. I mentioned Jabari's impact stats. According to cleantheglass.com, Jabari has the best on-off differential of any player on the team, +8. That means that the Blazers are 8 points per 100 possessions better when Jabari plays versus when he sits. He's an on-off darling, the king of the kings. The Blazers are better when Bari plays. I think the on-off stuff can get a little... I don't think it's meaningful in like... just read it. If the number's good, that player's good and best when they play. Last year, Duop Reath had the best on-off marks of any player on the team. The Blazers were consistently won his minutes when he played and lost the minutes when he sat. He had the best on-off net of anyone on the team. But I think what's true, if you watched Duop last year, is like he had some limitations. They kind of showed up at the end of the season, and he was clearly an NBA player who had earned NBA money and got paid like it. And then he was like not probably capable of being a starting NBA center or even like a really consistent regular backup, but he had like earned himself into an NBA rotation. The numbers suggested he could be positive. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing with Bari is like, it's not that he's just like so good and you have to go to him and you look at this on-off net and you say, yeah, this freaking works. You say like Jabari does enough good stuff. He rebounds, he defends, he's shooting better. He allows you to play a different type of defense where maybe you don't have the rim protection, but you do have the versatility. He can play a little bit of 4 because he can guard multiple spots. Like he gives you some options. But Jabari is entering the summer where he'll be a restricted free agent. The Blazers will be able to match any offer he gets, but he's not going to get any offers that aren't the minimum. So if the Blazers want Jabari Walker back, they'll probably offer him a minimum contract for him to be back. Maybe something fairly similar to the one he signed coming out of the second round of the draft, which is like some guaranteed money up front and non-guaranteed years in the future, and gives the Blazers a ton of team flexibility and gives Jabari himself to play himself into more small millions. I don't think Jabari's going to be in demand. I think like he's a minimum guy. He's a second-round pick who has not quite shown what his like high-level NBA skills are, but he's intriguing enough that not that these 3 games will tell you anything, but that I'll be curious what he does here because I think he's a decision that the Blazers have to make. If I had to guess, he won't be back because that's kind of the churn of NBA rosters, right? You pick a guy in the second round, you give him 3 years, he doesn't quite crack his way into the rotation, and you wish him well. Doesn't mean that he won't be back, but if I had to guess, that's just kind of how generally NBA decision-making works in the league. But if he is back, he'll be back on the cheap because that's kind of what his market will be, and the Blazers will have a chance to see if he can grow and blossom to any more because he's the type of player they like. They like the positional versatility, toolsy defenders. That's the role players they have always targeted, like under the Joe Cronin era. a little bit bigger than in the past and not as much shooting maybe than like the sort of the Gary Trent type of role players of yesteryear, Alan Crabb role players of yesteryear. But like this is the type of team they want to build, with positional versatility and with defensive upside. I think both Rupes and Jabari Walker have that to varying degrees. How much that translates to the court will remain to be seen. But I think one of the things I'm going to be watching the final 3 games of the season, as the injury report gets longer than the number of available bodies, is how do these dudes do these guys stand out? Not because it'll be defining, but because it'll be intriguing. And that's what I'm after. Intrigue. I hope you are too. That is going to do it for today's show. On tomorrow's program, the Blazers will play the Utah Jazz. We will talk about that basketball game. Some really good coach will also probably get fired too, because the NBA just doesn't care. And we'll talk about that should it happen. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.